A historic 12-day trip to Asia. This journey took us to 5 nations to meet with dozens of foreign leaders, participate in 3 formal state visits, and attend 3 key regional summits. It was the longest visit to the region by an American president in more than a quarter of a century. Everywhere we went, our foreign hosts greeted the American delegation, myself included, with incredible warmth, hospitality, and most importantly, respect. And this great respect showed very well our country is further evidence that America's renewed confidence and standing in the world has never been stronger than it is right now. When we are confident in ourselves, our strength, our flag, our history, our values, other nations are confident in us. And when we treat our citizens with the respect they deserve, other countries treat America with the respect that our country so richly deserves. During our travels, this is exactly what the world saw: a strong, proud, and confident America. Today I want to update the American people on the tremendous success of this trip and the progress we've made to advance American security and prosperity throughout the year. When I came into office, our country was faced with a series of growing dangers. These threats included rogue regimes pursuing deadly weapons, foreign powers challenging America's influence, the spread of the murderous terror group ISIS, and years of unfair trade practices that had dangerously depleted our manufacturing base and wiped out millions and millions of middle-class jobs. The challenges were inherited, and these products really showed what previous mistakes were made over many years and even decades by other administrations. Some of these mistakes were born of indifference and neglect, others from naive thinking and misguided judgment. In some cases, the negative influence of partisan politics and special interests was to blame. But the one common thread behind all of these problems was a failure to protect and promote the interests of the American people and American workers. Upon my inauguration, I pledged that we would rebuild America, restore its economic strength, and defend its national security. With this goal in mind, I vowed that we would reaffirm old alliances and form new friendships in pursuit of shared goals. Above all, I swore that in every decision, with every action, I would put the best interests of the American people first. Over the past 10 months, traveling across the globe and meeting with world leaders, that is exactly what I have done. Earlier this year in Saudi Arabia, I spoke to the leaders of more than 50 Arab and Muslim nations about our strategy to defeat terrorists by stripping them of financing, territory, and ideological support. And I urged the leaders to drive out the terrorists and extremists from their societies. Since that time, we have dealt ISIS one crushing defeat after another. In Israel, I reaffirmed the unbreakable bond between America and the Jewish state, and I met with leaders of the Palestinian Authority and initiated an effort to facilitate lasting peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. In Brussels, I urged our NATO allies to do more to strengthen our crucial alliance and set the stage for significant increases in member contributions. Billions and billions of dollars are pouring in because of that initiative. NATO, believe me, is very happy with Donald Trump and what I did. In Warsaw, I declared to the world America's resolve to preserve and protect Western civilization and the values we hold so dear. In Rome, Sicily, Hamburg, and Paris, I strengthened our friendships with key allies to promote our shared interests of security and prosperity. In September at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, I urge that the nations of the world join in confronting rogue regimes that threaten humanity and laid out a model for international cooperation grounded in respect for sovereignty and the responsibilities that come with it. On each trip, I have worked to advance American interests and leadership in the world. And to each of these places, I have carried our vision for a better, a vision for something stronger and sovereign, so important, sovereign and independent nations rooted in their histories, confident in their destinies, and cooperating together to advance their security, prosperity, and the noble cause of peace. It was this same vision that I carried to Asia 2 weeks ago. And it was this same commitment to you, the American people, that was always at the forefront of my mind and my thinking. Our trip was defined by 3 core goals. First, to unite the world against the nuclear menace posed by the North Korean regime, a threat that has increased steadily through many administrations and now requires urgent action. Second, to strengthen America's alliances and economic partnerships in a free and open Indo-Pacific, made up of thriving independent nations respectful of other countries and their own citizens, and safe from foreign domination and economic servitude. And third, to finally, after many years, insist on fair and reciprocal trade. Fair and reciprocal trade. So important. These 2 words, fairness and reciprocity, are an open invitation to every country that seeks to do business with the United States. And they are a firm warning to every country that cheats, breaks the rules, and engages in economic aggression like they've been doing in the past, especially in the recent past. That is why we have almost an $800 billion a year trade deficit with other nations. Unacceptable. We are going to start whittling that down, and as fast as possible. With these goals, it was my profound honor to travel on this journey as your representative. I explained to all of the world leaders and across Asia how well the United States is doing. Economic growth has been over 3% the last 2 quarters and is going higher. Unemployment is at its lowest level in 17 years. The stock market has gained trillions of dollars in value since my election and has reached record highs. We are massively increasing our military budget to historic levels. The House has just passed a nearly $700 billion defense package, and it could not come at a better time for our nation. Once again, our country is optimistic about the future, confident in our values, and proud of our history and a role in the world. I want to thank every citizen of this country for the part you have played in making this great American comeback possible. In Asia, our message was clear and well received. America is here to compete, to do business, and to defend our values and our security. We began our trip in Hawaii to pay our respects to brave American service members at Pearl Harbor and the United States Pacific Command, the guardian of our security and freedom across the Indo-Pacific region. As our country prepared to observe Veterans Day, we remembered the incredible sacrifices and courage of all of the veterans whose service has preserved our liberty and a way of life that is very special. We also thanked military families for their support for our brave servicemen and women. From Hawaii, we traveled to Japan, a crucial U.S. ally and partner in the region. Upon landing in Japan, my first act was to thank the American service members and Japanese self-defense forces who personify the strength of our enduring alliance. Prime Minister Abe and I agreed on our absolute determination to remain united to achieve the goal of denuclearized North Korea. Shortly following our visit, Japan announced additional sanctions on 35 North Korean entities and individuals. Japan also committed to shouldering more of the burden of our common defense by reimbursing costs borne by American taxpayers, as well as by making deep investments in Japan's own military. This will include purchases of U.S. advanced capabilities, from jet fighters to missile defense, systems worth many, many billions of dollars, and jobs for the American worker. Prime Minister and I also discussed ways we can deepen our trade relationship based on the core principles of fairness and reciprocity. I am pleased that since January of this year, Japanese companies have announced investments in the United States worth more than $8 billion, 17,000 jobs. Thank you. Oh, they don't have water. That's okay. What? Oh, it's okay. Oh. Japanese manufacturers, Toyota and Mazda, announced that they will be opening a new plant in the United States that will create 4,000 jobs. We also signed agreements between our nations to enhance infrastructure development, increase access to affordable energy, and advance our foreign policy goals through economic investment. From Japan, we traveled to another key American ally in Asia, the Republic of Korea. My official state visit to South Korea was the first by an American president in 25 years. Speaking before the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea, I spoke the truth about the evil crimes of the North Korean regime, and I made clear that we will not allow this twisted dictatorship to hold the world hostage to nuclear blackmail. I called on every nation, including China and Russia, to unite in isolating the North Korean regime, cutting off all ties of trade and commerce until it stops its dangerous provocation on, and this is the whole key to what we're doing, on denuclearization. We have to denuclearize North Korea. We have ended the failed strategy of strategic patience, and as a result, we have already seen important progress, including tough new sanctions from the UN Council. We have a Security Council that has been with us and just about with us from the beginning. South Korea agreed to harmonize sanctions and joined the United States in sanctioning additional rogue actors whose funds have helped North Korea and North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. It's unacceptable to us. The United States welcomed the decision of President Moon to remove the payload restrictions on missiles to combat the North Korean threat. And together we reaffirmed our commitment to a campaign of maximum pressure. Like Japan, South Korea is increasing its defense contributions. During our meetings, President Moon acknowledged his desire for equitable cost sharing for the United States military forces stationed in South Korea. And I visited soldiers at Camp Humphreys, a brand new joint American-South Korean base, paid for almost entirely by the South Korean government. At that base, I discussed with the United States and South Korean military leaders both military options and readiness to respond to North Korean provocation or offensive actions. During our visit, President Moon and I also discussed America's commitment to reducing our trade deficit with South Korea. At my discretion and direction, we are currently renegotiating the disastrous U.S.-Korea trade agreement signed under the previous administration. It has been a disaster for the United States. Last week, 42 South Korean companies announced their intent to invest in projects worth more than $17 billion in the United States, and 24 companies announced plans to purchase $58 billion in American goods and services. From South Korea, Melania and I traveled to China, where, as in Japan and South Korea, we were greatly honored by the splendor of our reception. Our trip included the first official dinner held for a foreign leader in the Forbidden City since the founding of the modern China, where we enjoyed a very productive evening hosted by President Xi and his wonderful wife, Madame Peng. During our visit, President Xi pledged to faithfully implement United Nations Security Council resolutions on North Korea and to use his great economic influence over the regime to achieve our common goal of a denuclearized Korean peninsula. President Xi recognizes that a nuclear North Korea is a grave threat to China, and we agree that we would not accept a so-called freeze-for-freeze agreement like those that have consistently failed in the past. We made that time is running out, and we made it clear, and all options remain on the table. I also had a very candid conversation with President Xi about the need to reduce our staggering trade deficit with China and for our trading relationship to be conducted on a truly fair and equitable basis. We can no longer tolerate unfair trading practices that steal American jobs, wealth, and intellectual property. The days of the United States being taken advantage of are over. In China, we also announced $250 billion worth in trade investment deals that will create jobs in the United States. From China, I flew to the city of Da Nang in Vietnam to attend the leaders' meeting for APEC, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. There, I spoke to a major gathering of business leaders where I reminded the world of America's historic role in the Pacific as a force for freedom and for peace. Standing on this proud history, I offered our vision for robust trading relationships in which Indo-Pacific nations can all prosper and grow together. I announced that the United States is ready to make bilateral trade deals with any nation in the region that wants to be our partner in fair and reciprocal trade. We will never again turn a blind eye to trading abuses, to cheating, economic aggression, or anything else from countries that profess a belief in open trade but do not follow the rules or live by its principles themselves. No international trading organization can function if members are allowed to exploit the openness of others for unfair economic gain. Trade abuses harm the United States and its workers, but no more. No more. We will take every trade action necessary to achieve the fair and reciprocal treatment that the United States has offered to the rest of the world for decades. My message has resonated. The 21 APEC leaders, for the first time ever, recognize the importance of fair and reciprocal trade, recognize the need to address unfair trade practices, and acknowledge that the WTO is in strong need of reform. These leaders also noted that countries must do a better job following the rules to which they agree. I also made very clear that the United States will promote a free and open Indo-Pacific in which nations enjoy the independence and respect they deserve. In Vietnam, during a state visit in Hanoi, I also met with President Quan and Prime Minister Phuc to discuss the growing friendship between our countries. Our Vietnamese partners are taking new actions to enforce sanctions on North Korea. In addition, we committed to expand trade and investment between our countries, and we pledged to address the imbalances. I am particularly pleased that the United States and Vietnam recently announced $12 billion in commercial agreements, which will include $10 billion in U.S. content. Finally, I visited the Philippines, where I met with numerous world leaders at the U.S., ASEAN, and East Asia summits. At ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, we made it clear that no one owns the ocean. Freedom of navigation and overflight are critical to the security and prosperity of all nations. I also met with the prime ministers of India, Australia, and Japan to discuss our shared commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. During our visit, President Duterte of the Philippines thanked the American people and our armed forces for supporting the recent liberation of Marawi from ISIS. We pledged to strengthen and deepen our long-standing alliance. At the East Asia Summit, the United States negotiated and signed 4 important leader statements on the use of chemical weapons, money laundering, poverty alleviation, and countering terrorist propaganda and financing. And crucially, at both summits and throughout the trip, we asked all nations to support our campaign of maximum pressure for North Korean denuclearization. And they are responding by cutting trade with North Korea, restricting financial ties to the regime, and expelling North Korean diplomats and workers. Over the last 2 weeks, we have made historic strides in reasserting American leadership, restoring American security, and reawakening American confidence. Everywhere we went, I reaffirmed our vision for cooperation between proud, independent, and sovereign countries. And I made clear that the United States will be a reliable friend, a strong partner, and a powerful advocate for its own citizens. The momentum from our trip will launch us on our continued effort to accomplish the 3 core objectives I outlined: to unite the world against North Korean nuclear threat, to promote a free and open Indo-Pacific region, and to advance fair and reciprocal economic relations with our trading partners and allies in the region. We have established a new framework for trade that will ensure reciprocity through enforcement actions, reform of international organizations, and new fair trade deals that benefit the United States and our partners. And we have laid out a pathway toward peace and security in our world, where sovereign nations can thrive, flourish, and prosper side by side. This is our beautiful vision for the future. This is a future where this vision, this dream, is only possible if America is strong, proud, and free. As long as we are true to ourselves, faithful to our founding, and loyal to our citizens, then there is no task too great, no dream too large, no goal beyond our reach. My fellow citizens, America is back, and the future has never looked brighter. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all.
Do you want to resign, Mr. President? Do you believe in the future?
Now that you're, are you worried about the violation of...
Do you find suspicious?
Yes, very. Ibig sabihin, may deal. Pero hindi ko naman siya sinisisi. Baka lang.
Okay.
Bawal po. Sana. Sir, bawal po. Tingnan niya konsensya niya. Alam nila na inosente ako at mga paratan na ito ay gawa-gawa lang. So naiintindihan ko sila. Nagigipit din sila, iniipit din sila. Sana magpakalalaki. Yung mga go-accuse ko, wag na silang magpagamit. Nagpapagamit sa mga kampo ni Duterte na nagigipit sa akin.
We will definitely question it.
Dapat kailangan totoo sila. Huwag na silang magsinungaling.
Ingit lang po. Very good. Ma'am, reaction lang po. Inamend po nila information against you instead of drug trading conspiracy na lang po.
O yun, so ibig sabihin, hindi pa rin talaga alam ano ba talaga yung akusasyon nila sa akin. Kasi kung yung Supreme Court mismo, ay they cannot also agree on the true charge, whether it's drug trading or conspiracy to trade drugs. Di, ibig sabihin, illegal yung pagkaka-aresto sa akin at pag-detain. Kasi hindi nga klarado, hindi nga nila alam kung ano mismo ang akusasyon ko. So dapat na-release na nila ako.
Diretso. Thank you, ma'am.
Napasok ka ba? Diretso.
Aray.
Wala na. Alas na.
Attorney.
Taking evidence. Leila de Lima. 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 Leila de Lima.
Kasi yung kaso, ano po? Ano? Conspiracy? Conspiracy na.
Yun ang nakausap ko natin kanina no, sa ambush interview si Senator Leila de Lima matapos ngayong pagdinig ng kanyang drug case dito sa Muntinlupa RTC. At mahalagang informasyon lamang no, nag-file ng motion for amended information ang DOJ. So inumyendahan na nila yung kaso na kinakaharap ngayon ni De Lima mula sa drug trading ay ginawa na itong conspiracy. So mas mabigat na kaso at tinagal na rin nila sa mga accused si dating Bucor OIC Rafael Rago. So ito, kakausapin natin o interview natin yung piskal naman ng DOJ na nag-file ng kanilang amended information.
Tanong.
Sir, check. I understand po nag-file kayo sir ng amended information. Paki-elaborate na po.
Yes, we file an amended information for the exclusion of the accused Ragos from the original information as an accused.
Okay.
And the defense has time for them to either comment or position on the said amended information.
So you dropped Ragos as one of the accused?
Yes, we asked for leave of court for the dropping of Ragos as one of the accused. He was charged in the original information. And we have done that. We have done the same in order to conform with the evidence
Sakal na ako
as far
rito,
as the joint resolution of the panel.
So saan na siya? Witness na siya?
Yes, we will utilize him as a witness.
Sir, paulit lang po, you dropped Ragos.
You drop Ragos. You drop Ragos as one of the accused in the original information. And he will be utilized as an ordinary prosecution witness.
Witness na siya. Okay, sir, bakit ilan yung kaso kay Senator De Lima from drug trading to conspiracy?
But there is no such amendment as far as the jury of the case is concerned. And the evidence that will be presented by the prosecution under the original information will also be the same evidence to be presented under the amended information.
So ano yung motion na pinag-information? Yung motion na information na amended information na pinag-in on Friday?
Yes, this pertains also to the exclusion of Ragos as one of the accused.
So
So she amended it for more of phrasing lang,
Wording lang. But the theory of the prosecution is the same.
all the allegations are there.
And if all the allegations are there, and if the defense have already prepared their defense, their theory of defense in the original information, that will also be applicable if they will be utilizing the same amended information.
Sir, mas
Section 26, against conspiracy.
mas mabigat po ba? Ano pinakaiba nun?
There is no other change in the penalty. Pareho din yan.
Pareho lang din.
Pareho rin. Pero sa bakit kailangan mag-iba? Not to be more
Ronnie Dayan.
Hoy, mga mic nyo, baba nyo! Baba nyo daw, baba! Pakiulit. Opo, sir, yung kaso ko, tawag ba, naging conspiracy na lang.
Nag-file kanina ang prosecution ng na baguhin yung informasyon from drug trading, ginawa nila ang conspiracy to commit illegal drug trading. Yun ay pinag-aaralan namin ngayon at nagsabi kami kay Judge Guerrero na magkasampa kami ng opposition para hindi tanggapin ito ng bago-bago trato ng prosecution sa kaso ni Senator De Lima.
So medyo suspicious ba ito? Parang nag-iba. Ano reaction mo na kami?
Makikita niyo yung flip-flopping ng prosecution kung ano talaga naging kasalanan ni Senator De Lima. Ano yung pinaparatan nila kay Senator De Lima. Reflection din to ng nangyari sa Supreme Court dahil sa Supreme Court, kahit yung mga maestrado natin sa Supreme Court, hindi rin sila nagkakasundo kung ano talaga ang kaso ni Senator De Lima. At tinitingnan namin ito bilang violation ng kanyang constitutional right to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation against him. Hindi talaga malinaw na ang pagka-file ng motion to amend ay pagkapatunay lang talaga na wala at peke yung mga ebidensya kay Senator De Lima.
Sir, advantage mo ba o disadvantage sa inyo pag amend ng information?
Pinag-aaralan namin ngayon na masusi yan at anuhin namin, ang sasagutin namin. Pero ang masasabi lang nga namin yan, ulitin ko, ito'y pinapakita na kahit ang siguro ang prosecution, nalilito na rin kung anong gusto nila isang kay Senator De Lima.
Reaction na sa inclusion o exclusion kay Ragos as one of the accused?
Personally, I find it, hindi pa dapat nila ginawa yan dahil hindi pa naman na-amend na natatanggap yung kanilang amended information. Kasama yan sa mga sasagutin namin.
Sir. Ay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Ay, yan po mga kapatid. Yung kanina yung naka-white na in-interview natin ay yung po yung fiscal, no? Na head ng DOJ panel at yung huli naman na na-interview natin ay si Attorney Bonita Cordon na miyembro naman ng defense panel. So yun sabi nila, magbibigay sila ng komento doon sa motion na inihain ng DOJ na amyendahan yung kaso from drug trading mula sa drug trading na gagawin na drug conspiracy. Dumalo rin pala dito sa pagdinig si Ronnie Dayan at si dating Bucor OIC Rafael Ragos. So si Ragos ay tinanggal na sa isa sa mga akusado, gagawin na raw siyang witness ayon sa kampo ng prosekusyon. So nakausap din natin sa interview natin kay Senator De Lima, sabi niya na patunay yung amended information o yung pagbabago ng reklamo laban sa kanya na talagang malabnaw at gawa-gawa lamang yung reklamo na isinampa sa kanya dahil hindi na sila magkakaintindihan o yung mga panel ng prosecution hindi na nila alam kung ano yung kanila raw isasampa laban sa senadora. Okay, mula dito sa Muntinlupa, RTC, ako si Jay Barcena, News 5.
I have come to carry forward our tradition of friendship.
Cooperation in many areas is bringing in an early harvest of tangible benefits. Altogether, these concerted efforts of the Philippines and China have secured peace, stability, and development in the region.
Those were Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and President Duterte speaking at a press briefing in Malacanang Palace earlier today. Good evening, I'm Sean Yao. The big story for Wednesday, November 15, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang's official visit to the Philippines, wherein he oversaw the signing of more than a dozen deals. It's been a very big week for international diplomacy, and Manila's had a front row seat to all the action. Li's visit is coming off the country's successful hosting of the ASEAN and East Asia summits. Here's why this visit is one for the history books. This is the first visit of a Chinese premier to the country in a decade. It's also his first overseas trip since he was re-elected into China's Politburo Standing Committee, the top governing body for the mainland. Beijing says this new leadership will usher in a new era for China. While Premier Li is here, President Xi Jinping is in Laos, something political analysts say is Beijing working its charm offensive on Southeast Asia. We also know from the speeches throughout the ASEAN that President Duterte remains hesitant to escalate the South China Sea issue. In his final briefing during the summit, Duterte said now is not the time to raise the dispute, particularly since ASEAN and China have agreed to start negotiations on a, quote, substantive and effective code of conduct at sea. This afternoon, President Duterte rolled out the red carpet in Malacanang Palace for his Chinese guest. In a joint briefing, both touted stronger, warmer ties between Manila and Beijing. Duterte said there's, quote, vigorous momentum in relations and that two countries will continue discussing ways to cooperate on a number of areas.
Practical cooperation in many areas is bringing in an early harvest of tangible benefits. We will also discuss shared interests and mutual concerns on defense, security, maritime cooperation, law enforcement, transnational crimes, as well as cooperation on how our two countries can confront the drug menace that harms both shores.
Duterte extended his gratitude to the Chinese government for its help in rebuilding Marawi, as well as bankrolling infrastructure projects in the Philippines.
Premier Li's visit also allows me the opportunity to personally extend my gratitude to the Chinese government for its valuable support of the ASEAN chairmanship of the Philippines this year, and its assistance to our country's build infrastructure initiatives. It's looking for the welfare of the people who live and work in China, its benevolent assistance in providing military equipment to the AFP, Armed Forces of the Philippines, and its aid to the rehabilitation and reconstruction of Marawi City.
In response, Li was likewise effusive in his praise of Duterte, saying his trip to Beijing last year was an icebreaker. The premier also pledged more aid for the rebuilding of Marawi and signaled that trade ties are on the uptick.
The Chinese government will provide 150 million RMB yuan of grants for the rebuilding and improvement of livelihood in Marawi to demonstrate the support of the Chinese people. We are expecting that the Chinese tourists will make some 1 million trips to the Philippines by the end of this year. The practical cooperation between us in such areas as infrastructure, agriculture, and poverty alleviation has also been going strong.
The highlight of this afternoon were the 14 memoranda of agreement the two leaders signed, spanning a number of areas, from defense, infrastructure, climate change, to intellectual property and youth cooperation. Most of the agreements revolve around public works projects, including the 2 bridges across the Pasig River and a drug rehabilitation center, both of which had been announced months ago. There's also the financing agreement for the Chico River Pump Project and the new Centennial Kaliwa Dam Project. And on markets, Finance Secretary Sonny Dominguez, together with the Bank of China chairman, signed an underwriting agreement for the issuance of renminbi-denominated bonds. We'll have more on those deals in just a bit. But for now, some good news for those watching news on live stream. Facebook and the government have teamed up for a high-speed internet project. They say it may rival PLDT and Globe's combined bandwidth. Bim Santos reports.
A game changer that will vastly improve the country's internet services. This is what the government's new partnership with Facebook is promising. Under the deal, Facebook will put up a submarine cable system landing in the east and west coasts of Luzon. The Bases Conversion and Development Authority will in turn build the two landing stations in Poro Point La Union and Baler Aurora, connected by a 250-kilometer cable corridor known as the Luzon Bypass Infrastructure. This bypass will cost some 975 million pesos. The Department of ICT will afterwards operate and maintain the landing stations and put up the backhaul infrastructure connecting to end users. The connection is slated to go online in 2019 and is seen to rival the combined bandwidth of both PLDT and Globe.
Facebook will provide the Philippine government with spectrum equivalent to at least 2 million megabits per second. 2 million megabits per second, significantly expanding the capacity available for the government's connectivity programs. These 2 terabytes per second is almost equal to the current combined capacity of Globe and Smart PLDT. So pwede na kami maging third player.
The government may fancy itself as a third telco player, but they're not exactly going head-to-head with the two dominant players. The project ties into the National Broadband Plan of the DICT, which means they will be primarily catering to the unserved and underserved areas in the country, and not so much the urban areas. The DICT says it's also looking at ways to lease certain network systems to small-scale internet service providers.
Itong 2 terabytes na makukuha natin, talaga hong mabiging mabilis ang ating internet sa mga free public Wi-Fi. And because ang more or less ang cost niya is yung kwan lang, yung raw cost lang ang nagawa, it will make our internet very much cheaper.
The whole project is called Secure GovNet and will connect Luzon to internet hubs in the US and Asia.
One of the things that we've been building out recently is our global network infrastructure. We look to increase capacity, increase diversity, and apply and adopt the latest in system technology. And this is one of those projects that fits perfectly into what we're trying to accomplish.
The social media giant has been busy rolling out internet infrastructure in frontier markets. These include launching solar-powered drones that beam down internet access and teaming up with tech companies like Microsoft to lay down a massive subsea cable system in the Atlantic. Though Facebook sees its efforts as a noble initiative to make internet accessible, some critics cite potential violations in net neutrality, where Facebook creates a walled garden of content that excludes other providers. But in a country like the Philippines, where complaining about internet services is almost a national pastime, perhaps that is a price users are willing to pay. Bim Santos, Bloomberg TV, Philippines.
When the big story returns, we'll take a closer look at the 2 bridges that China's committed to fund. We'll have the details after this. Stay with us. You're still watching The Big Story. Now that our ASEAN chairmanship has drawn to a close, allow me to bring in Maris de la Cruz. Maris is the communications and media head of the ASEAN People's Forum. Maris, welcome to The Big Story. Let me get right to it. Obviously, not all sectors were 100% satisfied with how the ASEAN summit played out. I did read your statement at the ASEAN People's Forum. You had a few key issues that you felt were not addressed sufficiently. Can you talk us through these points?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sean, for having us here. We felt that there's a great disappointment in the last recently concluded ASEAN summit. First of all, the people were excluded in all this, in this process, in this entire process. There were many times when we asked for discussions, dialogues with the heads of state, or at the very least with high-level officials of ASEAN, but we were sidelined by the government. And also, most especially the issues with regard to the basic needs and rights of the people were also not addressed. For instance, the needs of the people to live a life of dignity, to have regular jobs, their level of income, and also their social protection and access to social services. These were not addressed in the recently concluded ASEAN summit. And also the issue of territorial conflict. This was not decisively addressed by the government, and most especially the conflict in Myanmar, which had killed about hundreds of thousands of Rohingyans and displaced many of them. So these are key issues of the people that were not tackled during the ASEAN summit.
Okay, let's go back to basic needs and rights of people and inclusivity and no one getting left behind. That's actually the theme, or the overarching theme of our chairmanship this year. It's prosperity for all. It is, inclusivity. And it was, I did hear discussions. I was at several summits where this was discussed, so I'm not sure exactly which points you're not happy about or not satisfied about. Is it really the dialogues?
Yeah, we were asking for dialogue since the beginning. So there were 4 instances I listed here. During the ASEAN summit, we asked for an audience with the heads of state, so that people from different countries in ASEAN, the members of the ASEAN People's Forum, will be able to air their concerns to the heads of state and make use of this occasion to really bring out these issues and ask not only the government but also the governments in the region to address this at the regional level.
So you were rebuffed 4 times, and that was one of those times.
One was the ASEAN summit in April, and we were just given time with some officials, not the heads of state. And then the other one was in August during the ASEAN 50-year celebration, when there were foreign ministers, when there was this foreign ministers meeting. And then again, during the joint consultative meeting, we asked for members from different ASEAN pillars, from the officials of the different ASEAN pillars, to at least listen to the people. But again, we just faced the leaders from the Philippines. And then lastly, this November, we asked again for an interface or dialogue with the heads of state. But again, they always tell us that there's no time, the schedules are always full, and there's no time for them anymore to meet with us.
Just to put everything in context, Maurice, in the past, were the other members or the former members or the older members of the ASEAN People's Forum granted audiences by the heads of state?
Yeah. They were? On several occasions. I can't remember. I think during the ASEAN summit in Malaysia, there was that interface. Then also in Indonesia, there was that interface also with between the heads of state and the representatives of the ASEAN People's Forum. Not all the time, but many.
There have been instances. Yeah. All right. This territorial conflict, you mentioned Myanmar and the conflict in the Rakhine region over there. I actually kind of heard it. It wasn't very extensive, perhaps, but it was brought up, I believe, by the Malaysian Prime Minister. Was this not enough for you guys?
Yeah, we are glad that the Malaysian Prime Minister raised it during the last summit in April. However, this time there was we didn't hear at all any comment or that this was taken up during the ASEAN summit. And this territorial conflict is not only with regard to the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea, but also with regard to the ethnic conflict happening in many parts of Southeast Asia, particularly in Myanmar. So we are facing a humanitarian crisis, and the ASEAN region is quiet about it. So that's really disappointing for us, and not only for us here in the region, but also internationally.
Okay. Well, also China just promised, as you could hear earlier, they just promised to build some big infrastructure, some bridges, drug rehab centers here and there, also financing for some big dike projects and river pump irrigation projects. How do you guys take all of this, of us shifting to China? Now China's trying to, so to speak, court the ASEAN.
I was waiting to hear among these deals that would really cater directly to the needs of the people. Unfortunately, these deals are about defense, about infrastructure. Well, intellectual property rights is good, but with regard to infrastructure projects, we have experienced before that there are many negative impacts also of these big infrastructure projects, negative impacts on the livelihoods and displacement also of people. So we don't know what are these projects for, and aside from that, what will be the, how will the contracts look like? We don't want a repeat of the onerous agreements that we had in the past, and oftentimes these onerous agreements are entered in these infrastructure projects.
Okay. Maurice, before I let you go, now I think this can answer all of our questions. You did come out with a list of recommendations in your press release. One of them, number 9 on that list, although I believe that's in no particular order, is calling for support for a people's alternative regional integration. What does that really mean?
Yeah, it means coming from the bottom. An integration coming from the bottom. That means including the people. If the ASEAN wants to really partner for change, it should partner with the people. And alternative regionalism with the people and by the people. So there should be a consultation and also support for the people to be able to implement their projects that would really address their concerns.
So you feel like with the ASEAN integration and the formation of this ASEAN economic community, that somehow all these things you just mentioned have been excluded?
Well, with the ASEAN Economic Community, we have heard that these are about trade agreements of the big corporations, multinational corporations, and we see that this will impact negatively on migrants, on labor, and also with regard to access of the people on essential or public services. Because the motivation is more on profit by the companies.
Right, but they actually came out really late last night. They came out with some sort of framework on migrant workers. I'm sure you've gone over it. Is it lacking?
Yeah, this is a positive development, although we still need to look at the final document, and it's not even legally binding yet. So we still need to look at the framework, this document, and then also what's more important is the plan of action to be adopted immediately, and that it has to be funded also.
I agree with you, at least on that point, right? I mean, these are nothing if they're not put into action. Now, also when it comes to labor and, cross-border labor or opening our borders to labor, that's a lot trickier than opening it up to goods, and trade, right? So what is your stand, being the ASEAN People's Forum? Are you guys pushing for, rapid opening of borders so that work can flow? I mean, workers can flow and just go through borders.
Well, it's good to have free movement of workers also, as long as it won't be a race to the bottom, as long as the rights of the workers will always be protected and the living income will not be affected negatively. I mean, that if it's going to be a race to the bottom, then the income of workers may also suffer. And more importantly, we want to ensure that the social protection of people, of the working people, will be ensured wherever they go. So there is also that portability of social protection.
Okay, so again, you can't take a stand unless you hear something more concrete about how this is going to be rolled out. Maurice de la Cruz, thank you very much, representing the ASEAN People's Forum on The Big Story tonight. Now, after witnessing the signing of various memoranda of agreement, President Duterte and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang led the launching of 3 China-funded projects. Here are the details.
2 bridges and a drug rehabilitation facility. Those are the projects that were launched here in Malacanang during the official visit of Chinese Premier Li Keqiang. The 3 projects will all be funded by grants, meaning it shouldn't make a dent on the country's debt profile. The two bridges will connect Binondo to Intramuros in Manila and Estrella and Pantaleon in Makati. That's on top of several other memoranda of agreement signed between the two countries. That includes financing for the Kaliwa Dam and Chico River pump irrigation.
Thank you.
Finance Secretary Sonny Dominguez thanked the Chinese government for the grants, highlighting the impact these projects will make on the administration's priorities.
These projects show China's understanding and sympathy for the challenges that confront our people as we move forward towards a truly dynamic and inclusive economy. We thank the Bank of China for taking the lead in helping us gain a foothold in the Panda bond market.
DPWH Chief Mark Villar announced that the two bridges will start construction early next year and it will be led by Chinese architects.
Two of the most significant bridges across the Pasig River will be prioritized for implementation through a grant aid bridge project from the Chinese government, namely Binondo Intramuros Bridge located in Manila and Estrella Pantaleon Bridge.
The Binondo Intramuros Bridge will span 743 meters long and will accommodate 2 lanes at a width of just under 22 meters. The Estrella Pantaleon Bridge, on the other hand, will be a bit shorter at 560 meters long and will also accommodate 2 lanes. Construction is estimated to take 2.5 years. As for the Drug Rehabilitation Center, Health Secretary Duque says it could benefit millions.
The World Drug Report 2016 estimated that a total of 247 million people were using drugs in 2014. It is estimated that about 1 to 2% of drug dependents will require initial care in a residential drug treatment facility. In the Philippines, intelligence reports suggest a figure of 4 million people abusing drugs.
The Finance Department has also submitted a list of additional new projects for Chinese financing. This so-called second basket of proposed projects will include a railway to link Subic in Clark, an expressway in Davao, and an inter-island bridge that will connect Panay, Guimaras, and Negros.
Time to go over other headlines. China will help the Philippines set the stage for developing nuclear power. At the sidelines of the ASEAN summit, the two countries signed a cooperation agreement where Russia will assist the government in crafting a national policy for nuclear energy. Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi said partnering with Russia is part of the government's effort to harness nuclear energy for safe use. This will involve assessing the mothballed Bataan nuclear power plant for possible rehabilitation. Remittances contracted 8.3% in September. That is the sharpest plunge in 14 years. Cash sent back home by Filipinos overseas stood at $2.18 billion, down from last year's $2.38 billion. The Bangko Sentral says the decline could be partly attributed to the continued repatriation of OFWs from Saudi Arabia who are under the amnesty program. Some analysts say the decline may be temporary and should recover in the fourth quarter. The Transport Department will look into the freak accident yesterday which cut off the arm of a woman. That's according to Undersecretary Cesar Chavez after criticism for the supposed slow emergency response. Senate Committee on Public Services Chair Grace Poe claimed the accident could have been prevented with a passenger railing safety feature. But the Transport Department said they can only add more security guards and implement a skip train scheme for now.
Structurally, ay hindi na natin pwedeng ma-adjust yun ngayon. By this time, medyo imposible yan. Sir, pwede natin gawin dyan, pag-aralan namin yung platform screen door na ilagay doon. No, it may take time sometimes. Well, ang unang ginawa ng gwardiya, this is not to justify, ay kumuha ng picture kasi sila naman ang mayayari dyan. Ano? But whether or not yung training ng guard, yun ang iimbestigahan natin kung anong dapat gawin.
That wraps up today's big story. I'm Sean Yao. Please don't forget to follow Bloomberg TV Philippines on Facebook. I'll leave you tonight with Chinese Premier Li Keqiang comparing ties with Manila to the weather. Good evening.
Winter has come to Northern Hemisphere, but the temperature in Manila is still running pretty high. I think that somewhat reflects the temperature of China-Philippine relations. We hope that we will continue to work together to strengthen this positive momentum and work together to make up for the time that we may have lost.